I came out the womb, I was ready. Tell him, mama, you know I was ready. That's why you have it.
See how there's nobody around me? This is how it is in the field of play also.
Jerry Wright! Oh, what a catch by Wright! Touchdown, 49ers!
Between you and Talib on the field early in the game. I don't know. You gonna ask him because he didn't finish the game. Ice up, son. Ice up.
Dude right there said, hey, man, I was going to tell you, you're the best receiver in the game. I said, I know.
All I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
Welcome to the Top of the Route podcast with your hosts Justin Grandinetti and Mike Vannucci.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Top of the Route podcast. I'm really excited about episode 2. Today, we're going to be talking about the fundamental movements of wideout play. We got some breaking news. Obviously, the NFL free agency has hit. Multiple people have signed different places, but we want to talk about one that literally just came out a few minutes ago. Mike Evans, longtime Buccaneer, played his entire career there, is going to the 49ers. All right, Mike, what you think about that?
I'm excited for him, and I think he's got an opportunity to win another ring. And really continue to solidify his legacy. You know, it's really hard to get in as a first ballot Hall of Famer at wideout. You see guys like Torrey Holt and many others, T.O., that didn't get in for a multitude of reasons. I think Evans is building his case. So we know
100%.
about his consistency over the years. I think another ring, rings are more than individual stats, but I think it just solidifies a legacy potentially. Mike's a pro's pro, man. Like if he's going somewhere to continue playing, you're going to get somebody who's potentially an all-pro every single time he's healthy and on the field. So I'm excited for him to be there. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to do some really good things with him. And I think for a team whose identity is to really run the ball, one thing about his game that's super underrated is obviously he plays the wideout position physically as a pass catcher, but man, is he physical as a run blocker. Like he's got probably the most viral run blocking clip ever.
Yeah.
Where he hits dude up and dumps him on his head.
Yeah, and it's crazy because that's something that we, I know here, like we really work on stealing that release, but not only do we want to steal a release, but we want to, incorporate a tilt technique, getting back inside and getting hands on that dude. So not only are we stealing, but it's like as you drift down the field, maybe that DB starts to kind of, taper off a little bit. He's just running me off. And then now we engage. And in that clip you're referring to, I mean, to say he engaged would be quite the understatement because like you said, he did dump him.
No doubt.
You brought up the Hall of Fame thing. I was going to ask you, do you feel like he's a first ballot Hall of Famer? I mean, the numbers are crazy. And let's not get it twisted, guys. And Mike kind of touched on it with the ability to win a championship. I mean, he brings that type of caliber. And let's not act like, last year is what happened last year is going to be, how he has more in the tank for sure. I mean, this dude is ready to play. I foresee him coming back. With maybe, if you want to call it a chip on his shoulder, but just he's making up for last year. And I think he's going to have some insane numbers. 1,000 yards every season up until last year. I mean, I think he's had 1,000 yards every year since like high school.
Every year. He's just an elite talent in the league of the best of the world, right? Like he stands out year to year. One thing he said about like run blocking that stuck to me was like why he goes so hard in the run game is because it's like body blows. Like eventually, like you're going to wear this guy down. Like he's a bigger dude. And I think that's a good little nugget for kids to take that are still playing. Like the run game is so important, not only for, of course, for the success of your team, but for your individual matchup as well.
Without a doubt.
Like nobody wants to be blocked and harassed for 60 minutes throughout a game or whatever. It's half the ball, half the field, but half the side. I think that's one nugget that I think everybody could take is the value of just being constant in the run game and just having a never ending motor and kind of letting the cover defender across from, like it's going to be a long one. Yeah. It's going to be a long day.
I love that too is, I think all coaches at some point talk about how much of the game is mental, right? So to your point, when you're that receiver and you're constantly coming off the ball and attacking the DB in the run game, or he's off and you're chasing him, to take the angle, like that really starts to stick in your head a little bit. And like, to your point, those dudes across, like anybody doesn't want to be hit all game. So maybe now, instead of him being down a little bit closer, he's giving you just a little bit more space, and that space that you need to create down the line or down in later on in the game. So I completely agree. I'm glad you brought that up because, especially for the wide receivers out there, the young wideouts out there, it is super important, not only to the success of the team, right? Brendan Marion says, what you do to the football determines how much you love your teammates. Love that quote. It really sets a precedence and allows you to open things up for yourself later on in the game. I'm a firm believer in that. We preach that in a major way here. So that's awesome. I mean, again,
Yeah.
think about that dude that consistently, comes away with 1,000 yards, but is one of the more dedicated and just all around good run blockers at the wideout position. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm
So
excited.
really excited for him.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%, 100%. So, again, obviously we wanted to touch on that, really talk about one of the elite, wide receivers in that, in the league for some time now. But this episode, we are going to be talking about the fundamentals of wideout play, what we feel like are the 4 fundamental movements of wideout play. And we'll just kind of expand on it a little bit. Just be, keep an eye out for things, throughout the week. We're going to drop some shorts, some clips of things. You'll probably see some Mike Evans clips because of the news and some other things. But we're really excited to just kind of share and talk some ball.
Yep.
Mike and I were talking earlier, and we happened to just get on Zoom just the other day with a couple other coaches, and like before you knew it, it was like 2 hours later, and we just been talking ball, talking some of this stuff. So it comes it comes natural, but it's something that we enjoy talking about. So with these fundamental movements, guys, we're going to start with the stance and start. Obviously that's where everything begins. Like, what's your take on the stance and start? How are you incorporating it? Like, how are you coaching it up? Or do you feel like sometimes, I mean, obviously it's an important skill. Do you feel like sometimes coaches overcoach it? Like, what's your take on some of the stuff?
I think we as coaches need to be mindful of trying to fit people into metaphorical boxes.
Mhm.
It stance and start is definitely not one size fits all. There are some like things we want to check, boxes we want to check, and then there's bandwidths, right? So everybody doesn't have to look exactly the same.
No.
So I think that it's partially overcoached. It's easy to coach. So guys, like we as coaches kind of feel comfortable coaching it. So we may overcoach it a little bit. But I think there's probably a little more leeway now than when we played in the stance
Agreed.
and start, where I think we see some of the best receivers in the world do certain things that might be putting them in optimal positions to accelerate off the ball. That might have been frowned upon 20 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So
No, I agree. There's definitely, I can recall some years ago, and I think I used to overcoach the stance for sure, just like most people. And, watching some of these players, how like, I remember having this one dude and it just wasn't kind of what I was teaching. It was a lot more compact than what I had been telling the guys, but he was firing off the ball. So it really made me, check myself a little bit where it's like, why am I going to change? Why am I going to change him when he's aggressively getting off the ball and it's, he's making it happen fast? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So I think there is some common practices, some things that, you can make sure that they're doing, especially against off coverage. But, to, like you said, everybody's body type's different, the way they bend different, just their overall athleticism, explosiveness, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of differences that these guys have. So to put everybody in one category, in one stance, it's just not going to make sense. So we definitely want, I'll say this. One of the things I like to tell these guys is, if you're looking at the 40, right, and you're looking at that front shin angle, you have that acute shin angle. And for me, I think the closer you get there while being comfortable, right, the closer you get there, the less wasted movement. You look at the dudes that completely are just kind of standing up, right, straight leg, almost front, like maybe slight bend in the knee, but that shin angle is pretty high, right? It's not bent too much. The first thing I do, right, is that big time dip to explode out. So I think, there's a way to get comfortable while getting closer to that point.
yeah, I agree 100%. And I think no matter what, almost like most cases, I think you're gonna get like that shin angle dropping slightly.
Absolutely.
I think we
Absolutely.
can reduce that significantly by preparing and having our knee. I like to say knee over shoelace rather than knee over toe because I think knee over toe is probably too much from the large population. But
Mhm.
knee over toe and knee over shoelace, where it's semantics, right? Like we
No
don't need
doubt.
to dive into that argument. We want that positive shin angle. That also will lock that front foot down, so we don't have to pick it up to put it down. Or the back leg for us, like it's got to be bent. We see a lot of
Yeah.
guys almost with a
Mhm.
locked out back leg. The analogy we like to use is like it's throwing a jab in boxing without being able to bend your elbow, right? Like
That's a
it's
good, yeah, that's a good.
it's less power. It might not be biomechanically exactly the same, but
Mhm.
conceptually, it seems to take towards that analogy. So back leg is bent. back toes are dug in the ground. We like to tell guys you're almost built. You want to build an imaginary track block behind that back heel,
Yeah, very
where
similar.
you're setting your foot up to where you're pushing off the block, but really you're just pushing. The way you have your foot in the ground is it feels as if you're exploding through that back foot.
No doubt.
And then we need some type of torso lean, like a little bit. And this is where it gets super, super individualized. Is like how much trunk flexion is there in the stance and start. I like to tell guys belly button on their thigh. Like it's just like a quick cue, really simple. It tends to get guys into a good starting point of where, and then kind of adjust from there, find comfort from there. That's
And
kind
it
of
makes
what works for
sense to
us.
them.
Yeah.
They can visualize that so they can easily execute it. Absolutely.
Yeah. How about you, Jess?
How about what about you? So I'm similar. Like again, I really want to make sure we're getting as close to that front shin angle, that acute shin angles. Again, I think like you said, and I 1000% agree. You're always gonna have that dip. It's just not. I mean, unless you really get down there, and maybe some dudes do it. I've seen some dudes be able to come out of their stance with a really acute shin angle, but that's not comfortable for everybody, and we understand that. But I think the closer you get there, for sure, that back knee bent, couldn't agree more. Again, it's just like you look at it. If you stay, and I'll have guys do this, and I think it's important when you're explaining it so they can see, whether you as the coach or just have the player do it, but like just have them in a stance, standing up and take off and film it, or just watch and looking at all that movement that happens, and then now conform it to, all right, a little bit more acute shin angle, back knee bend, like, some forward lean to it, and then see how much less wasted movement is so they can visually see the difference. Because at the end of the day, right? I mean, we're talking about tenths of seconds that we need to make up for. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but then you ask a kid, what's the difference between a 4.4 and a 4.5? And it's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's probably millions of dollars sometimes, but being for them to be able to see that, I think is important. What about the hands? Like, how are you coaching this? I've, it's funny. I've gone back and forth throughout the years. I've heard dudes talk about different things with the hands and the arms. I know kind of where I'm at, but what is your take on it? Do you notice, like, especially if a kid comes to you for the first time and, maybe they're doing whatever, like, do you change that arm? Do you keep that because they're comfortable? How do you handle that?
I really don't like the hands on the thigh.
Yeah.
There's no way around it other than like there's wasted time, because the first thing that has to happen is that to leave the thigh. It's like the new thing that everybody's doing now because it's super, super comfortable. Comfort's okay so long as it's not sacrificing efficiency. So long as the comfort, like hands down, hands up a little bit, like we don't want to look like the Fighting Irish symbol. Like 19, like I remember like when if I'm watching some of my like older high school film, like I look like the Fighting Irish symbol. And like that's like stumbling out the bar, like,
Yeah.
like the old comic books fighting. Like I don't think we want to look like that.
No, I agree.
I think hands up a little bit is fine. Obviously versus press, different animal, but versus access, it's like down and relax, maybe slightly up a little bit.
Yeah.
Is kind of where we want them, but there's leeway there. Just I don't want them on the thigh. I think they got to separate and then flex and extend versus they're already readily available.
Again, it's that wasted movement that we want to eliminate as best as possible.
Yeah.
I remember speaking to Josh Gaddis, and at the time he was with Alabama coaching receivers, and I was talking to him about some of the hand fighting stuff. And at the time, like, he was explaining how after watching a lot of tape with the guys when their hands up, and I think that's coach how the hands go and all that stuff. But what he was saying is a lot of times he watched the film of guys doing it, and the first thing they actually did was the hands dropped to come back up. And I thought that was really interesting because, you would think, right, the hands are up, so we could just go at it. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of dudes that do that, and I think you can coach it. But for him to say after some film evaluation and things like that, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, for me, I don't. Again, I think press is a different animal. I certainly want those hands relaxed, like you were saying. I don't want to do too much with it. So again, everybody's different. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but at the end of the day, like, whatever you could do to eliminate wasted movement, I think is paramount.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And what you said before about not, sacrificing, you just don't want to, if comfort's getting away of the technique and the integrity of what we're doing, that becomes an issue. But
Yep.
you do want them to be comfortable to a certain extent, as far as, like, again, going back to the original point of not putting everybody in the same stance.
Yeah.
What about inside foot to outside foot? Are you allowing guys, like, are you cool with guys switching their feet? You know, because obviously a lot of places may talk about, hey, inside foot up always, or outside, you know, whatever. And obviously some of the stuff is based on, let's say, steps. And I know we have a submitted question that we'll get to later. I think that is in regard to steps, and we'll get to that. But what's your take on it?
I think that if it's some route that requires a step count, I think it makes complete sense, right? Three
Yeah.
step slant, 5-step glance, 4-step out, 6-step out. I think that stuff is really paramount for timing and for the offense. I think if it's reps that require routes that require depth, I don't think it's as important. But the main thing for me is once it's press coverage, that should be out the window, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And that I'm not going to die on a hill for access. For press, I might die on that hill because when you lock in a certain foot up, you limit what releases are available. So now
Absolutely.
that's like saying you own a contracted business, you send in a contractor out and you only letting him bring a hammer. So when he gets there and they
Yeah,
got
you're limiting
screws
the
and
rest
he's
of the
got a screw
tools.
in the wall, he's got to turn the hammer over and figure out how to screw him in
Yeah.
because you're not letting him bring the screwdriver. So I just think
Perfect point.
we're limiting kids and athletes and wideouts on what releases are available. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
you and I are similar in our release work where we don't have the hokey pokey and the hoopty doop release. Like we have
Yeah.
concise release plans,
No doubt.
but still they're limited when we're only allowed one foot up rather than the other,
Agreed.
in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm the same. I think I'll say this: 2 or 3 years ago, I started to just say, you know, give my guys the leeway to change things up, especially in press. Like, you know, again, you know, we'll work on certain step counts for sure, but when it comes to press man, you know, just to your point, I don't want to limit them or limit their releases or what they can do because I'm just so gung ho about them keeping their inside foot up. You know,
Yeah.
that's just, I mean, we're similar in that regard. And again, I'm with you on that. You limit them for sure, and you're making the DB's job easier because we're limiting. And that's
Yeah.
the last thing we want to do, especially in that situation, especially when we have to win that. We may need to win that matchup right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, stanza start again is certainly one of the movements that, you know, we want to focus on. We're just not going to overcoach it, but certainly some things we want to make sure that we are accomplishing so we can eliminate the movements or eliminate the wasted movements, excuse me. Next one I want to talk about, or what we want to talk about, is hip drop. And, you know, I mean, shoot,
One of
man,
the
this
most
is
fun to
like,
coach.
man, I love it. I love hip drop. And again, I know I talked about the first episode, but when I first saw it from Dub, I just thought it was like, I was watching and I'm like, wow, like it's so simple, but damn, does it make a ton of sense to work that skill? You know, what we do is we run and we change direction, and we hopefully are changing direction at a super violent and really fast pace
Yeah.
to get one place to another. And what helps us do that is the hip drop. So, Mike, what's something like for you? How long have you been coaching that skill with your guys?
Really since we started training kids, but it's changed so much over from year one to now. We were steps in the break and we were
Yeah,
arms in the break. Now we're less arms in the break and we don't care about the steps. We care
yeah,
about how we
same.
enter it and the body position in it, right? So, and I would even argue, not argue, there's nothing to argue about, but like before we even worry about, we work the break point position before we even overemphasize the efficacy of the break. It's how are we entering the break,
No doubt.
right? Like we need to get comfortable accelerating into the break point
Absolutely.
because you could have an A+ break point, but if he knows when you're about to break,
Indicators.
it's null
Yep.
and void, right?
You know, we're just talking about it over the weekend again.
So stride changes, chest lifts, arm action changes. The break point doesn't matter. It doesn't
At
matter.
all. At all.
Now, if you got a 10-yard stop versus corner who's off and bailing, you're probably going to catch the ball anyway. But now it's a bang bang play instead of potentially having yak,
Yeah.
right, or something along
Yeah.
those lines. So rule number one for us that has changed. We haven't always viewed it that way. Is let's run into this thing like fearlessly, run into this thing, and then we start. You know, we're still training and vertically integrating breakpoint mechanics and how to attack in our vertical stem.
Absolutely.
But I will take especially for a kid who's first starting, like I will take a aggressive, fearless vertical stem,
No
A+
doubt.
vertical stem, A+ entrance to the break point, and a C+ break versus the other way around.
You can, I mean, and what's crazy is, you know, the more you do it, the more you run hard and break, the more comfortable you get with it, and the better the breaks become coupled with, right, that aggressive attack to enter the break, you know, and to your point, right, like if the if the aggression is there, right, how you enter the break is selling that vertical. You can honestly sometimes get by with a lackluster, let's say, break, because our job is to get that DB to turn and run upfield, or we'll call it full hip angle, right? Getting those dudes to turn and run, or getting them to chase. Like those are the things that we're looking for. If he's just playing comfortable because we're not running as aggressively, and again, like our arm cadence is changing, and we're raising our pads, and we're doing all these things to tip off that we're about to make a move. Well, yeah, then he can sit on that route a little bit more, and now break on it. Now we're in trouble. But if you get that dude to fully, commit to running upfield, now that, and I think we mentioned in the first one, like he's always going to break late. Like we're always
Yeah,
gonna be ahead. But again, it's about practicing how to enter. And we do a ton of that. And I know you do as well. And it kind of springboards a little bit for the stance and start, right? Like that drive phase is so important for us. It's so
yeah,
important.
100%.
We want to make sure that, we're not popping straight up. We're driving those arms. Like everything has to sell that vertical. And to me personally, man, and you have to practice that. Like I took,
$100%.
I took my guy that, just graduated this past winter, one off season. Of course, we were going to work everything, but that was our focus. Like, I'm like, yo, our focus is mastering to the best, or as close to mastering that drive phase as we can, because we have to make sure everything looks the same. So I think that's a skill, like honestly, just like how to run aggressively, and not show, or, not tip off with those indicators. I think that's something that you need to practice.
Yeah, the big thing for us, like when we're watching films, if if it's a little shorter, it's a little bit more challenging. But
Yeah.
if it's a little bit longer of a depth, like did I get his belt buckle to the end zone, which is like that full angle
Yeah.
you're
That's what
talking
yep.
about. Because once I've got his belt buckle to the end zone, he is running full speed.
No doubt.
If he stays in his crossover run,
We're
he's
going to run
he's in a
fast.
better position to break. But
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
like if he's in our hip chasing us because we're not running, we're not really
Correct.
attacking. If he's belt buckled to the end zone, we're running side by side, and we do our job. And our indicator that we present to him is our hip drop. He is late to the break. So
Yep.
now it's reaction time is to react to the break, and then who runs the drill better? Who runs the hip drop drill better?
You go.
I know we run a
Yes.
million of them. So
Yeah.
I'd be hard pressed. I'd be
Hey,
hard pressed to see the DB run a better hip drop drill than we do.
bruh, I'm so glad you said that. I literally was talking about that with some coaches. I was I was clinicking them on some receiver stuff, and we were talking about hip drop, and that's my whole thing. We work it so much. There's there's no doubt in my mind that we're gonna win as long as we get that full hip angle, that turn. Like we're gonna win because we work it so much.
Mhm.
I know the person across from us doesn't work it as much as we do. That's my mentality.
Yeah.
And the guys know that, right? Like the guys that you work with, they have that in the back of their mind, like, yo, I've done a million of these. There's no way
Mhm.
that dude across from me has done the amount of drops that I've done, especially in the way that we do it. Like running, let's say, 10, 12 yards and just dropping those hips. Like not a lot of dudes are practicing that on the other end. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but to your point is we know that we're just going to be better at it because we just work it more. It's that
100%.
confidence. It's that we know we're going to win as long as we get that turn, as long as we get, like you said, that belt buckle to the end zone or that full hip angle, like we're saying, we are super confident we're going to win.
100%. And just talk to me about, like, let's talk about the break, the actual when we're in the break point now, how to initiate it and then being in it. Talk to me about why you kind of moved away from steps in the break, like saying, oh, it's got to be three. It's got
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. Because I felt like, to what we're saying, when I was super hyper focused on, all right, it's a 45, 3 steps. All right, it's a dig, 2 steps. The guys became so focused on the steps that they never ran fully. They never ran as hard as they can because they were just focused on, all right, coach said I have to get out in 3. I have to make sure I get out in 3. When in reality, again, if we get that turn, if it takes us 4 steps, we don't care because
Yeah.
we have that dude running upfield. So we can aggressively drop our hips. And if it takes us 4 steps, we're still going to win. Because again, we practice that drop and that break way more than, let's say, the dude across from us. So when we were hyper focused on the steps, we never got to that aggressive attack mode, like you were saying. Things that I know when we're doing some hip drop work is, especially like, let's say, stationary drop, or maybe we're going to like a step and drop, something minimal. I always want to make sure they hold it at the bottom because I do believe that there's an importance of learning how to be balanced or living in the break. right? Like when you're, let's say dudes, and dudes will do this. I know you've seen it, especially when they're first learning how to drop their hips, or in their mind they're wanting to put more force in the ground. They almost create that like fly fishing like whip with their upper half. And
Yeah.
what happens is, I mean, it's pretty evident, like you just become too top heavy, right? And again, like when you're dropping and you're too top heavy, now when you depart from the break, you're going to be off balance.
100%.
Right. So I think there's such an importance for guys to learn and feel what it's like to be balanced in the break. So when we do those stationary drops, when we do whatever, I want them to hold it and feel like, even if we're running and doing some drops, like they're going to snap their hips. I don't want them I don't want them always popping straight up. I want them to live in it. I want them to feel what it's like to live in that break.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So,
there's a lot of good stuff there to unpack. Definitely like we same thought process, same coaching, um, just different jargon. Like
yeah, yeah,
we'll say marry the break, right? Like
love
you,
it.
so red light, green light, especially kids will hit
We
1, 2,
love that
pop up
drill.
and run it, pop up, 1, 2, pop up, run again. And the problem with that is we're not getting out of 12, 15 yard comebacks in 2 steps. So what are we really working on if our red light, green light is 1, 2, stand up and run?
Correct.
Because it's not authentic.
No.
It's not. I'm not a fan of it. I wanted to mirror what's going to occur in the break point as much as possible. So we'll have guys stay in there like for no steps and just feel the rhythm of each step gaining ground and each step having a purpose and being firm in the ground. So no doubt about it, marry the break, hold your break positions for as long as possible, exaggerate them. Because the last thing we want to do is I'm running a comeback, I drop my hips, and before it's time to drive out, I'm standing tall and now I've lost energy. I can't run out, right? And then as far as the whipping motion, which is like, it is like the throwing the chest forward, like
Yeah.
you gotta conceptually understand anytime we're running hip drop, we're breaking flat or coming back down towards the line of scrimmage.
No
So
doubt.
when I throw my chest forward, I'm taking away from where I want to go. I'm putting my momentum forward when I'm trying to stop my forward momentum. So now
Yeah.
it's taking away from where we want to go. The biggest thing for us is like down, 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 not forward,
Absolutely.
down.
Absolutely.
Naturally, that chest might look like it's coming forward a bit because we're not sitting straight down with a vertical chest like we're squatting, like we're doing some type of squat variation, like a sissy squat or something. But the whole body is compacting. Where everything is coming down together, not forward. So that's some really good stuff.
And we talk about like just to explain it very simply, like what we're wanting to accomplish, right? When you initiate that run and you're running and you're hauling ass or whatever, you have all this forward momentum, all this speed. The way I explain it's like to paint a real simple picture. If that downward momentum is not greater than this, we're going to naturally push past that break point. We want to make sure that our drop is creating so much force that we're able to stop and change direction, right? Like,
Yeah.
when I want to sound smart out there, I tell them force equals mass times acceleration. Like scientifically speaking, right? It sounds fancy, but all I'm saying is drop your hips faster. You know what I mean? Like, so when we get into that, when we start with that, our stationary drop, for instance, I tell them this is the easiest and hardest drill because it's easy because we're just standing there and we're just dropping our hips, but it's difficult because you have no momentum with you. So you're going from
Yeah.
a dead stop to drop your hips fast. Again, that's why it's a skill that needs to be repped and practiced.
Yeah.
Because you can learn how to drop your hips fast.
100%.
Real quick before we move on to the next, one of the things that I love that you do and I've stolen from you is your trigger series. You want to just explain kind of how you guys go about your trigger series? Because I just think I think it's great. I think it's a nice progression, and you can incorporate it, even as a maybe even warming up in the session. So
Yeah, so we have a trigger series. It's one thing that we do off a step count because of how low level it is. So we'll do it as a 3-step cadence. There are some guys like that are a little bit more in tune with their body that can 4-step it, but since it's such a lower level drill, anything more than 3 steps just feels a little awkward. But the guys understand that like, hey, this is specific to the drill. Like the
Yeah.
break is not always 3 steps.
Is it important to explain it to them that way so that they know the difference?
Yeah, because there's so much info, there's so much like stuff out there that's like, you gotta get out in 3, you gotta get out
Yeah,
in 3.
yeah.
And to me, and I don't mean to call anybody out, but you're telling on yourself because when you put the games on Sundays and Saturdays and whoever you're watching, like there's a variety of foot cadences and breakpoints. Like
Yep.
some of the best guys in the world are out in 5.
Yep.
Like, so the 14-year-old down the street at the park, telling him he's got to get out in 3 when the $40 million receiver is getting out in 5 is kind of blasphemous. So I think that the focus, in my humble opinion, should be not to circle back to it, should not be on steps in the break. It should be, how are we entering the break? And then as we clear up and improve on the body position in the break, the suddenness of the hips, and how the feet interact with the ground, those steps will naturally reduce.
Yep.
So off that soapbox. So yes, we do have to explain it because there's a lot of misinformation out there, in my opinion. But we do a 3-step cadence. So we'll do, it's like a light jog towards the cones, and then we'll trigger down. So like we'll just initiate that break. We call it the trigger step, but really it's just dropping of the hips. And we want that to be straight down. We want the force applied straight down because that's the most optimal way to apply force to the ground. So we're straight down, whole footed, holding the body position. What we run into with that is some guys get too low. We don't want the body to deform at ground contact. So the foot hits the ground, I'm firm. Like I'm not getting lower and sinking lower. We don't want our back knee towards the ground because I can't pull my step through. Lower is not always better. The next set of cones, right? In the next set of cones, it'll be 1, 2. Next set of cones, it'll be 1, 2, 3. But now we're starting to rotate on 2, 3.
Yep.
So we're building that rotation because the next one, we're going to go trigger 1, 2 and drive out at a 45 without a hold. So we're hold, drive out. And it's really good because it teaches kids roughly how close my feet should be in the break point. Like it's like the introduction to where my feet should be in the break. Because sometimes we get kids that don't condense their strides. Sometimes kids will break in place, where the reality of it is in a break point, my feet will naturally gain ground. It kind of introduces where that should be, the rhythm and timing of the feet in the break, holding the break point position, how the feet should strike the ground. So it's a really good entry level drill. Now there's rhythm and there's coordination involved. So sometimes certain athletes, some of your younger guys, like younger high school that have never done it, might feel a little awkward doing it, and that's okay. That's
And
okay.
I think naturally that happens when you start to break apart these movements. You know, it almost seems like some of the guys are almost confused that why am I struggling with it? Because it's different when you break apart the movements, right? Like when you're just
Yep.
focusing on, let's say, the first part of it, you know, where you were saying about how the foot strikes the ground, super important. Full foot contact is a must. You know, we want to be able to absorb all that force. We want to be able to be balanced. Like, you know, you watch some guys when they're learning it, and sometimes like they go and break like kind of on the front part of your foot. And I'm like, imagine you came up here, you know, looking for wide receiver training. And I sit there and tell you, all right, I want you to run 10 yards and I want you to stop on the front part of your foot. You're going to look at me like I'm an idiot and walk. But it's like you watch guys and they go through that, and you really have to make sure that we're fixing that. The full foot contact is important, right? Like nail those feet into the ground, let the hips hammer at home.
Yeah.
You know? So, and that's why I love that trigger series, because you're able to, you know, focus on those details, and you can do it in a more controlled manner, right? Like to your point where you get someone that's relatively new, let's say, like they don't necessarily have to enter it, you know, aggressively. They can just kind of go through it, let them feel what it's like, let them feel what it's like for those feet to hit with full contact while dropping their hips. I think it's great. You know, these movements are super important, super important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So that's a good drill. Obviously, all the red light, green light stuff. If you follow Justin or I, we post a ton of hip drop drill work. Post a bunch of hip drop cut ups.
Yeah.
So you could definitely find some stuff there. Is there anything we missed on the hip drop? Want to talk about the arms in the break? I feel like that's a hot topic. It's like
We actually were discussing it the other day, and you know, again, things have evolved a ton, and you know, I'm gonna allow you to explain, you know, how we were talking the other day, because I thought you explained it really well as far as just from like a physiological standpoint and just how the body works. But you know, it's been a long time since people were beating the drum. If you want to make sure that the drop is violent downward, and you want to make sure that that momentum and that force is going downward, you really can't afford to have any type of other movements going on. And that was something we were talking about the other day, and Mike explains it really well, and I'm gonna allow him to do that. But so for us, yeah, I mean, we really don't want movement with our arms. I've told them, especially guys in the beginning that are first starting, like I don't want to overcoach it at first, because I don't want to give them too many things to think about. Like if I get a dude that's just first coming out there and he's learning hip drop, and I'm giving him 12 different coaching cues as far as chest and don't hop or arms and stuff. Now his mind's all over the place. So I'm just like, man, I don't give a crap what you do. Like I just wanted you to drop your hips fast. And then with arms, I'll tell him like, just keep them tight. Like I don't care, just keep them in your frame to start with. Once we get more comfortable and I feel like I can add more to that, then we can really start to coach it up and fine tune. But we don't, in a perfect scenario, we don't want our arms doing much at all. But can you explain just like we had in that conversation the other day, just why that movement with your upper half can be detrimental to the drop.
Yeah. So the first thing for me is like when you watch, like, so everything, most of where we learn things is from speaking to people that have been around more, been around better people, maybe whatever it may be, better experiences than we have had at the time being. And then film draws it, right? Like, what are the best guys in the world doing? Like, where are the commonalities? So I remember watching Jerry Rice run routes in practice, and he was never moving his arms. He was down. His body, everything was down to his side, whether he realized it or not. When you put the
Yeah.
film on, it's really not up for debate.
Yeah, it's right in front.
And then you watch more and more guys, and it's there. And then we tried it. I tried it myself because I was still playing at the time. And then we had guys we work with try it, and it just makes a lot of sense. Because if I am trying to stop myself, I don't want more momentum to speed me up. So
Correct.
I want everything to compress down. That means my bot, we said it before, my trunk is coming down. It's technically flexing a little bit, but we don't want it forward, but it has to come forward a little bit. And then once that trunk is flexed, you have very limited shoulder extension and flexion. How much arm movement are we really getting anyway? Because the elbow flexing and extending is null and void in regards to arm. Like, it does nothing for us. The next thing is there's got to be a certain amount of time on the ground with ground contacts in order to decelerate. I do not want anything to throw that rhythm.
Yeah, we can't
Okay,
afford it.
we
Can't
want
afford it.
firm contacts in the ground. Now, with all of this being said, some guys like to punch down, right?
Mhm.
It's that bandwidth. I personally like them a soft bend in the elbow, tighter to my body. Well, punching down still tight to my body. However, sometimes we get kids that punch down out in front, and that's a big no.
Yeah,
Because now you're pulling your chest forward, just like we spoke about before.
Yeah.
I'm trying to stop myself from going
Correct.
forward. Everything's got to be to the side, whether it's straight arm, whether it's bent elbow. It's kind of what we're looking for. We have some guys that punch down. The break is beautiful. It looks beautiful. I don't think we're going to fix it. I don't think him pumping his arms is going to make it better, or picking his hands up is going to make it completely better. So we may let it go. That is not one size fits all. When I'm teaching a kid from square one, we are teaching a soft bend in the elbow. Okay, it's like Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt's got scoliosis.
Yeah.
You're gonna.
You're not
you're
gonna.
You're gonna straighten his spine. You're gonna fix his spine.
Yeah, we're gonna. Right, exactly.
You're gonna fix his spine. It's his spine. He's not Usain Bolt anymore, right? So that's a little bit embellished. Conceptually, you guys understand what we're saying.
Yeah.
So long as everything is coming down, we're probably not going to comment on it. The problem that we get into with guys punching down is sometimes the arm action will change prior to the hip drop. That's when we have to fix it.
And
That's when we have to intervene. But if everything is down tight together, right? We want to compress down to decelerate and redirect. We're good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you'll see some guys, arms tight. You'll see some guys punch down. We've got about an 18-minute hip drop video. There might be 3 guys that move their arms in 18 minutes. So it's kind of where, like, these guys leave clues. Try it for yourself. Feel it. Talk to somebody who stopped moving their arms in a break and ask them if they're ever going to go back to moving them. We haven't had a kid yet that enjoys it.
Yeah.
So that's our thought process on it.
Absolutely. And that's, I mean, again, it's just, these are why, these are skills that need to be really coached up and fine tuned. And, you have to really nitpick and make sure that they're doing the things properly. Like on each rep, there's probably something that we can talk about. I'm a big believer in just you're wanting to say something, like saying something pretty much on every rep. I mean, it doesn't always have to be a teaching point. Like you could just be, hey, great job with your feet, something. But I want them to know that we want to master this or at least get to as close to mastery as possible. And just like you, I'm sure, right? We're not training to, beat just the average DB. That's not what we're training for. Like we're training to beat the most elite, the guys that can pick up on any indicator, the smallest change in your route or your running or whatever. Those are the dudes that we're wanting to win against. And that, by doing, like, focusing on that clientele, you have to be on point. And all that we do.
Yeah. And one thing to note, like, it's kind of less punching down and more of just like arms dying and letting everything drop together. I would argue there are some guys that legitimately actively punch down that play on Sundays and get paid a lot of money.
That's true.
Or at least it looks that way. But definitely we don't teach a ton of arm movement in the break. If there's movement, if there's slight movement at the shoulder joint, like we're not, and it's not throwing off the rhythm and the ground context, like I'm not coaching that out of a kid.
Yeah.
Right?
Goes back to the bandwidth stuff.
Yeah. Like if they're shrugging up and forcing arm action, like, we're coaching it out. if their hands are going really, really fast when we're trying to stop, we're coaching that out. Right? So it's bandwidths, but as long as everything is down compressed and it's happening after the hips, like that break is initiated by the hip, that's what we're looking for. That's really what we're looking for is suddenness down where the arms are, where the hands are. There are bandwidths. I personally like a soft bend in the elbow, hands a little bit higher than like fingertips to the ground. Some guys feel better that way. We've tried to fix them. They don't feel as good. The break didn't look as good. We've tried it for multiple times. And if it looks really, really good and it's been successful, right, here's the other part. The guy's winning at a really high level.
There you go.
Like it hasn't been a problem, right? Like I think that's the other part is
we have to be willing to have that type of leeway if they're successful with it.
Right. 100%. So that's kind of where we are with that. We're open to questions, and Coach G and I we'll get on a Zoom call and talk about this all day. We could make it a separate podcast if you want to be a guest and talk about it.
Seriously.
So that's our thought process there.
Absolutely.
And so the argument towards that is like, well, when you got to exit, you got to pick them up and run again, for sure. But it really doesn't cause that much, if any, loss in speed. It's partially why I like them. Hands a little higher, soft bend in the elbow, so my elbows are ready to run.
That would be my preference.
That's my preference, 100%. 100%.
Absolutely.
Like I like them. I like a soft elbow, hands a little higher, rather than straight arm down. But I've got some of the best guys we work with are straight arms.
All right, hey, the next fundamental move we're going to talk about is pressure steps. So you think of pressure steps, you think, running your slants, your speed outs, corner, post, things like that. That pressure step is key. It's really important to work on, obviously. This skill allows us to change direction while gaining speed. All right, we should not be losing speed when we're hitting a certain pressure step. One of the things that I stole from Mike, and I use it with my kids all the time, is in the pressure step, and we're talking right off coverage, you have some free access and space, that every stride should look and sound the same. So Mike, with that, and again, to me, it's one of the better coaching cues that you can give your guys when you're coaching them up on the pressure step and how to attack it. Where did that come from, and why was that so important for you to talk to your guys about? Like, why was that such an important cue for you?
Yeah, so anytime we're working a pressure step, speed cut, same family, we're finishing higher than where the foot hits the ground, right? Whereas like a hard break, we're working back or immediately flat. So those contacts have to be significantly more forceful. Since on a slant, a glance, a corner, and even an out, like an outer or rolling through a dig, like a deep dagger, since we are gaining ground upon the exit, I don't need that same violent contact.
Correct.
So we need to find what's the minimal effective dose, for lack of a better word, of force on the ground to redirect.
Yep.
If that foot is putting too much force on the ground, we're going to hear a loud thud.
Yep.
That's
I tell them the audio doesn't lie.
So that usually will mean that we're probably putting more force on the ground than we need. It's an immediate loss of speed. We're giving him a little bit of an advantage to beat us to the reception area. Now, the caveat with that is I have a guy on my hip. I got to flatten it out a little more. Now we may need to put a little bit more on the ground. Or you're a team that runs really, really flat slants. You like them more like 90s. Now we might need a little bit more force on the ground because the angle's sharper. But if we're running traditional slants where there's a little bit more of a higher angle, not high, we like them flat too, but a little bit higher than 90, or we're rolling through speed cuts, we want to limit how much force we put in the ground. We want the least amount of force in the ground to efficiently make that cut, redirect that cut to limit the ground contact time. Right. It should look like we're teleporting 3 yards left or right. Right. And the only way to do that is to limit the violent slam or sinking of the hip. It ultimately becomes like, how do you prefer your cuts? If you want your speed cuts like really, really flat, then you're going to get a slam and you're going to get a deceleration at the cut. And it's going to be significantly harder for kids. In my experience, it's better to just roll through them, gain a yard, gain 2 yards. And that's really what you see mostly versus access, is where guys are running through them effortlessly. Like absolutely effortlessly. I mean, same thing with slants and stuff like that versus access. So we want to limit the ground contact time as much as possible by limiting how much force is applied in the ground. It's truly a redirection off the inside edge of the foot than it is a violent ground contact through the midfoot, through the whole foot.
Exactly. And that's the key, right? Like that's one of the biggest keys right there is how you're striking the ground with your foot, as opposed to, the hard break, when we talked about hip drop before, that full foot contact. This is, in step, right? That inner part of your foot you're still striking, but because it's not full foot contact, like you said, you're not going to hear that loud thud all the time. We still want to create force with that. We still want to punch the ground and it's going to get us in that direction, but we're not breaking. And you get guys that let's say, haven't been coached up on it, and 1,000%, I could almost guarantee that's what's going to happen. They're going to throw that full foot in the ground and strike it in front of the hip, initiating break when really we're looking or wanting to change direction in an accelerated manner. That's what we're looking to do, you know, and that,
100%.
and you have to rep it. So like I want those guys, again, kind of breaking it all apart. I want those guys to know or learn what it feels like to drive through that instep. Because after you strike, you're still striking and pushing off that instep to get in that direction. So we'll do stuff like bounding, right?
Yeah, love the bounds.
Bounding through that instep, really feeling it. Obviously, you can do stuff like, you know, bound and hold and then roll it into a route, whether it's a speed cut, slant, things like that. We love a drill we call bound to build, where, you know, now it's more realistic, where you're kind of punching the ground and what I call like ping ponging yourself back, you know, back and forth on both those, like on those insteps going down the field and like gaining speed as you go. And then, to be honest with you, just running the route, but breaking it apart into steps. I've found that it is probably the most productive that we've encountered, especially to, again, your original point that I brought about, is allowing each step to look and sound the same. Watch your guys, and watch especially younger guys, run slants. Let's just talk about the slant for a second. If they're running a 3-step slant, I can almost guarantee that that second step is going to be shorter, because
Or leaking.
or leaking. And
Those are the two things that happens.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll allow Mike to expand more on what we mean by leaking. But that change in stride is so prevalent, and it's something that you really got to work. What I feel like why it happens is because your brain is always going to put your body in the most advantageous position. That's human nature. So when you come off that first step, that second step is shorter to make the third step, or that step that we change direction on, easier. Because when you shorten that stride, that second stride, that third step is super easy. How about maintaining that stride length? How about maintaining that stride length on like a bang 8 for 5? You know, can you maintain each stride and still change direction? It needs to be repped. It has to be repped. So those steps are so important to really just scale. So like, for instance, for us, when we run, if it's a slant day, Mike, you know, we'll go one step, we'll rep that. I want to see them get into that triple extension, just like if we were running the full 3. I want to see the 2-step position. I want to see both steps look and sound the same. And then obviously we finish off with the third step and really get into it. And then, you know, depending on the day, we'll segue to, you know, bang 8 and 5 and things like that. But you brought up a great point about leaking. And again, these are things that don't always get coached up, and you allow it to happen. And that leaking is, again, another indicator of giving that dude across from you a little bit of a roadmap to the endpoint. Can you expand on what we mean by leaking into the break?
Yeah. First thing, that pressure step series, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. If I could only do 1 step drill, like that's probably the one I'm doing. But in regards to leaking, happens a ton on speed cuts too. Probably even more on speed cuts than
I think so.
on slants. But so as I'm taking my second step, so I'm vertical off that first one. The second one is about to strike the ground, or after it strikes the ground. Before the third one hits the ground to press me or redirect me, my left shoulder starts to go. I might even start to cheat that second step where it starts to lean me inside.
I see that probably more. I see probably that the most.
The foot starts to point that way. The problem with that is I'm really not out of my glance. Like, I'm on the right side of the ball. I'm not outside. I'm not out of that break until my outside foot is in the ground, right? So
100%.
It's my second outside on the slant. It's my third outside on a glance. You know, could be different schematically. So if I start leaning that way, my stride changes prior. He's getting a head start to the reception. It cannot happen. It cannot happen. And a lot of times we get false positives. And what I mean by that is we're running like slant versus axis as routes on there. We can get any kid from the hallway to run a 3-step slant versus off at 10 and backpedaling, right? Like, that's the problem with it is you've now made a potential yak play into a bang bang play because he got a head start to the break area. Or the reception area rather, because of us leaking, because of us chopping our stride.
Yep.
So now this 3-step slant, which if we get a runner's ball, we could run through it. We have an opportunity to knife this thing vertically, is now potentially a bang bang play because he is out of his break before we're out of ours, because we lean, because we chop that stride.
Absolutely.
So like the full stride part is absolutely imperative, and it's got to be trained. That's a skill. That's a skill.
And
it's
again,
part of
like
entering fearlessly.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm in the same boat. If I had to pick one, one drill series, I guess, to focus on that, it would absolutely be that because I know for us, we've seen the most progress with that because you're literally working through what is exactly needed. We need
Mhm.
you to match your strides. I can show it back to you. This is what it looks like. Same thing with how we're like with the one step. And I know for us, I've seen this a million times, especially when the guys are first learning. So I'm telling them, like, we're talking about off coverage stuff. So everything has to go forward, is what I tell them, right? We want everything to go forward and get in that triple. How many dudes the first time they shift out?
It's
Like,
almost
but
the
again, like,
every time.
I've had kids that have shown up, younger dudes, and like literally every time they went to work a cut like that, they shifted. And I think it's something that's coached in you, you
Mhm.
know. And for us, again, like when we're talking, there's a time and a place for that, and they know that. There's a time and a place to get to that top part and shift the guy out. But if we're talking free
Yeah.
access off coverage, that ain't it.
Routes on air.
Routes.
There's because there's nobody. This is the part, and there's so much more of this in football than I think everybody wants to admit and realize because it's not fancy,
Mm,
it's not sexy.
no, sure ain't. We mentioned that last time.
It's
Some of these drills.
very separate. We call it separation by alignment. That sometimes you call the right concept versus the right coverage. He's at 8 and bailing because that's what his coverage dictates. That's what the
Yep.
scheme dictates. And we call it a 3-step slant or a 5-step glance. You don't have to create separation.
No,
It
it's
is
already there.
already it's
Yeah.
already there. You have to
It's
maintain
gonna
that
show up,
separation.
and it's gonna
So
show up.
anything extra we're given at the top is wasted,
Yep.
right? Like that's why it is so important to be able to be so damn efficient at running through your pressure steps, running through your speed
Yep.
cuts,
Matching
because
strides.
now we're maximizing what we're able to do at the catch point.
Yeah, 100%. And now again, you really can focus on that yak plan and making sure you're
Yep.
accelerating to the ball. But yeah, I mean, I mean, in high school football, I mean, a lot of times you're going to see some type of zone off covers. Let's say, you're playing a cover three team and, one of your main concepts, that quick game concepts that week is a speed out. Well, if if that DB is playing back and he's giving you that space to easily and readily catch this speed out, and as you're attacking, you start to change your stride, like you're telling him what you're about to do, and here he goes driving. So better be ready for impact on at the catch point. If not, he's picking the ball off. So there's so many. That's why it's so important to really work that skill of matching your strides, and it has to be repped. I mean,
Yep.
again, going back to your point about just things not being super sexy and visually appealing. I mean, the sessions will be we're working those steps. And it's,
Yeah.
again, I mean, maybe to whoever, and there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. So, it is what it is. But it can, I guess, for some people get mundane if you're looking at it. But for us, it's efficient. Like we really want to hammer that home. And for us, like working those steps in that succession, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, whatever it is important. It's extremely important. And, it really allows those guys to build that muscle memory to match those strides and make sure you're going. Again, there's a time and a place to shift them and change tempos and all that stuff. We are talking about free access off coverage.
Yep.
Match your strides, no leaking, get to it.
Run through it.
Run through it.
Run through it.
Run through it.
The fastest part of the route should look like your third step out of it. Like you should look your fastest, the third step out of your slant, the third step out of your glance. You should be accelerating through
Yep.
it. Now there are times to tee it up and settle in zones. That's all good and well. But if we're just talking about versus man coverage, off man coverage, we are running away from human beings. He's not relaxing out the break.
No.
He's racing to the football.
Yeah.
So
We
we
call it
need
chasing
to
space,
race to the football. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I think something that we've been working on too, and I think even in one of your videos within the past few weeks, you were talking about it. But as that ball comes out, like you can literally go at it. Like we're
yeah,
not
cut it
we're,
off.
we're not waiting for it and drifting away. As I come out that break, I pick up that football out of that quarterback's hands, right? And now I want to go. I want to meet that football, and
Yeah.
that may require me to kind of slightly go downhill at it. But think about that. Like not only are we getting the ball in our hands immediately or faster than we would if we were waiting on it, but we're now allowing ourselves to accelerate through the ball with an aggressive manner, hopefully firm catch through, so we can accelerate and maximize yak.
Yeah, and for sure, like for sure, for sure. One thing we like to tell guys is the longer we're out of the break, the more we have to get down through the football. If
Yeah.
you're out, if the ball's on you by the second step out of a slant or glance or whatever it may be, and slant's a little less likely to work down, but you still potentially can if it's a later throw. But like, let's say we're rolling a dig inside or our glance and the ball's not on us right away. Like ball's thrown, we have to go get it because the later the throw is arriving is the more time they have to drive. So if
No
I'm
doubt.
keeping my angle what it is and he's driving down on the football, that angle's closing. If I'm now redirecting to go attack the throw and he's attacking the throw, now it's an even race through the football.
It's an even race, and you almost create. When you hear the word stack, we constantly think about just the vertical game, but there's horizontal stacks, there's downhill stacks. Like by doing that and attacking that football and finishing friendly, right? What we would say, and really coming at it, you can eliminate or at least help yourself eliminate that undercutting. You create some type of horizontal or downhill stack based on how you're going at the football, which clearly can help us out. So we're not allowing this DB to make a play on it because our body's in the way now.
Yeah.
How many times
100%. I love that terminology, the horizontal stack.
it needs
And
it needs to be rep, right? Because again,
Yeah.
the natural what we naturally want to do, especially when that football is getting ripped at you, is you want to naturally fade away or drift your body away because again, it makes it easier. It makes the
Yep.
catch easier. So you have to work it. Like literally, we were working it, in our ball drill session, like where it's like, hey, that ball's coming. I want you to go at it. I
Yep.
want you to go at the football. Do not allow that your body to drift away. You see the ball, go and get the ball.
Yep.
Let's eliminate all this undercut. Let's go get it and accelerate through and maximize our yards after catch.
Yeah, the reality of it is, if you end the play with the football, you can never come off the field. Like if you just, if you could,
That's right there.
you could run whatever, however you want to run your route. You could run your route. You could run the worst route in the world. Every route you run could be the worst route in the world. But if somehow you end the play with the football every time,
You're gonna stay on the
you'll
field.
never come off the field. You can't come off the field.
That's so true.
So just win to the ball.
That's
That's the advice. Win to the ball.
Plain and simple. And I'll say this, because we wanna segue into this next one, but we can talk about each of these fundamentals more in depth. I mean, we're eventually going to probably focus on these things individually and really come back with some film so we can further explain and we can talk about that stuff. So, it's hard to kind of cover, let's say, every single thing. I feel like we touched on a lot of the stuff with each of these fundamental movements, but again, like especially with film study, which we'll get to, we'll be able to truly show everybody exactly what we're talking about. The last fundamental movement we want to talk about is hip shift, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to give it its own session because what we want is an episode dedicated to moving people. We want to talk about how we move bodies.
Yeah, how to
Hip
move our
shift-
cover defender off their platform. It could be line of scrimmage, top of
No
route,
doubt.
head up catch, whatever it may be. So
and shifting our hips is the necessary tool for that. So what we're going to do is we are going to dedicate an entire episode to just moving bodies, moving defenders off their platform. It's going to be really dope. We did post about question submissions, and I'm going to read them off, and we'll definitely touch on this for sure.
all right, so our first question from the Q&A segment comes from Braden Stahl. Braden's one of the best kids around. Anybody from Long Island knows him. He's a quarterback, Smithtown West. He's now at Lock Haven University, D2 in Pennsylvania. Shameless plug. He has a football mudding service. He's fantastic. We'll put his Instagram handle in the show notes at some point. He said, I'd love to hear you talk about route depth steps versus yards. He said he's heard sides of both stories. He just wants to hear our opinion on the pros and cons of each. Justin, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I think when it comes to, and every coach is gonna be different on this, but I love the steps. I just love the steps because at the end of the day, we go back to what we were talking about with the indicators. And when you allow yourself to just naturally stride, and you'll be able to pick up on how many strides or steps it takes you to get to 10 yards or 12 yards and things like that. I think it just becomes a more natural look, and it's harder to pick up when you're changing direction. So then the question becomes, well, hey, you're okay, cool. You're naturally striding. You have a 10-yard route, but it takes you to 11. And I would just say, who cares? I mean, if that's not even an adjustment that's needed, if the quarterback knows that he's throwing a 10-yard dig and my stride and break takes me to 11, I don't really see an adjustment needed there. the balls are going to still hit our hands. We're still going to make the reception. And again, to our point before, we can always come downhill at it, but what we're not going to do is we're not going to indicate that we're breaking just because we're looking to get to a certain a certain yard line. I've always said with even certain drills and things like these cones, ropes, whatever you use, they're guides, they're not restrictions. So if I'm telling you to break by the cone, I haven't really used a cone in a long time, but if I'm telling you to break at this certain point, it's not an end all be all. If you go a step past it naturally, it's all good. So I like the steps. I think if as a wideout, you start to learn, how many steps it takes you to do these certain routes, and you'll be able to adjust based off that. So again, you have that 10-yard out. All right, it takes you X amount of steps. And now all right, it took me to 10 and a half, 11. It's all good. When we get super hyper focused on the yards itself, and we say that's all that matters, I believe you're increasing the chances for a ton of indicators with your strides.
Yeah, I agree for like quicker game stuff, more pressure step stuff. So 3-step slant, 5-step glance, 7-step glance, 4-step out, 6-step out, things like that. When we're working like curl, comeback, and stuff like that, I am firm on run and drop. So like I don't
Yeah.
care, just because I think there's a lot of variables in the game that can change the steps. But I'm in agreement with
No,
you. If I get to 10 and a half and we have a 10-yard stop, like that does not change timing. I don't
Yeah.
care what anybody says. The ball might be on us a little faster, but what we will not do is miss short or chop our stride to get to a depth, because now it doesn't matter that we got to the depth because he's beating us to the spot. So 100% agree with that. Pretty much with about everything. I just, for like the comebacks, the curls and stuff like
Yeah.
that, like I think I'm more on the depth side where it's run, accelerate through to the depth, shut
Absolutely.
it down. If it ends up being drop, whatever, however you initiate your break. But I don't want any type of paralysis by analysis on that stuff. But 3-step slant, 5-step glance, all of those things, those are like hyper timing drills.
Yeah.
Whereas you
And
could argue the stops are too, but
And
yeah, that's how I feel.
and absolutely, you look at certain things where one of the things a lot of receivers are going to do, and let's say you have that 12-yard curl, and there's a dude that's sitting close to where that break is. Like you said, they break short, and that never works. Like you're not even getting him to flip. This is where you have to adjust, and you may need to push it a little bit further just to get him to run. So 100%. Because if you just allow, hey, I see this dude at my break point, I have to stop short. Like you're never even going to get him to flip his hips. He's just going to stand there and box you up.
Can't break on toes on curls. Like
Yeah.
you got to think about it. You got to think about it. If he's at 13 and a half and we have a 12-yard curl and I'm breaking, right? I'm just running in a straight line and breaking. How are you winning the race to the football? He's facing the ball.
Right.
And you're running full
You
speed
never
away
get him
from
to
the
flip.
ball, right? You
Yep.
need something to be able to flip him. And I think that the non-steps kind of affords us the ability to kind of put something in the top or in the stem to manipulate him. Now we might not fully get him to flip, but it can push him back, some type of false acceleration, something along those lines.
Yeah. And I think, so to have the combination is important. And like for me, when I'm talking about the importance of steps, it's mainly for the fact of, again, just not allowing us to chop and give indicators. You're going to have to adjust. You're going to have to push past route depth sometimes to get this dude to flip and open. You're going to have to stem and work and do all those things. And then, if you're basing that off steps, you're kind of going out the window. But what we never want to do is just show and tell, right? Like show that we're about to make some type of movement just because, we're getting to a certain yard line. All right, hey, I have a free access dig at, 10 yards. I'm in the slot, let's say, and I'm striding, but man, I really have to get to 10. So here I go, start to chop it up and get there. And now we're just letting somebody know that, hey, here we go. We're about to break. We certainly don't want to do that. We got get to a couple more questions here. This next one comes from Joey Medulla. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, but he's talking about ball tracking, cues and procedures, vert, corner, posts, etc. What are some, you want to touch on a couple of those and, talk about?
I think they're all similar personally. I think they're all pretty similar. The big things for us is we want to catch it at eye level, ideally. Like we want our hands to be eye level for 2 reasons. The first reason being, if we let it drop lower, it's harder and for us to track it that long. The second being, if the longer it's not caught is more time for the DB to
DB to
play,
make a play.
right? So if I get it at eye level, I'm catching it faster than if I catch it at armpit level, right? So those are the two reasons for that. Probably and then obviously paired with that is we should see the neck roll through your hands. Probably the next thing about that is we want to protect the throw. And what we mean by that is, like, I want to catch this over my nose to outside eye.
Absolutely.
Okay, because if
Keeping your body.
if I'm at the bottom of the numbers running vertically and we're running low balls on air and I'm catching the ball consistently over my inside shoulder, that's the DB's shoulder, right?
Yep.
Like there's going to be somebody on your hip more times than not. So if I'm catching it there, that's his shoulder. He gets to play that shoulder. We want to see it caught outside shoulder, like outside eye to nose, eye level as best as possible. And if that means balls inside, we got to go cut the ball off so we're not catching it here, then so be it.
Yep.
And then probably the last part, and probably the most common, and then there's some more as well, but this is the last one I'm going to talk about, is not opening the shoulder, right? Like I want to keep the shoulders closed as much as possible, because once this shoulder opens, whether it's on a corner, whether it's on a go ball, whatever it may be, once this shoulder opens, like if I'm running a go ball, these should be parallel with the goal line. I'll turn my chin to the shoulder, collarbone, and eyes to the sky to track the football.
We call it pinning the chin.
Pin the chin. So now you might get a little bit, but we want to limit like running like this. And the simplest way to think about it is you're just slower. You've never seen somebody run 100 meter running with their chest turned.
Exactly. And I tell them, like, if I were to challenge you to a race right now, you're not gonna race me with your shoulders tilted like this. To the other point too, if you got a body next to you and and you're starting to open up like this, you're just allowing that DB to just tag and box your ass to the coach.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
100%.
saying? Like, you're harder to move when you're square. If my shoulders are square, now all we're doing is fighting pressure with pressure, but I can still fight pressure with pressure, all right, while pinning my chin and looking up. I can't. You know what I mean? And I'm in control of that. I like what you're talking about at eye level. We always talk about high and late with our hands. And I also think, when you do have that opportunity to go and get the ball high, to your point, right? We're reducing the flight time of the football. But God forbid, like, if I bobble it, I can potentially adjust too. If it's high enough. If the ball's down here, I'm not gonna be able to adjust. Now we need to catch it the first time, but things happen.
Yeah.
We happen.
I would say a last thing on that, like when you do tracking drills, like put a human being next to you.
No.
Like on air is good. Like you should catch over the shoulder balls on air, but like go to the blue line. Well, it's blue line here because Long Island is just lax country and the biggest lax country in the history of the world. But whatever line you have at the bottom of your numbers, or just hold your bottom of your numbers or go down the hash, whatever it may be, you're on that line. DB is running next to you, and hold that line and feel the body presence. And now you could even work in stem combat. You could work punching the peck or flipping late. Just one suggestion on any tracking drills you do.
Absolutely. We'll get to let's get to one more question here. There's a few good ones, and if we didn't get to one, we'll look to respond to it maybe on social media or something like that. I think that could be a good one. Let's do this. Louis Mejias, what does a good training split for the week look like?
Louis, my guy, man. He is Louis, a really good player, man. Louis is some of you guys have probably seen him on social and didn't realize it was him. Louis, a really good player up in Morrisville. Great question, Louis. You know how I'm going to answer this because we talked to you guys about it. So I did a decent amount of strength conditioning performance training in the past prior to doing the receiver stuff full time. Man, like especially you college guys, like when you're home for the summer, you have full, especially like the D3, D2 guys, you have longer summers. So you have full control over your training schedule. So it's really non-negotiable to not optimize your training. So I'm going to give an example of what our college week looks like week to week. Sunday, we do college one-on-ones. All right. So we'll do one-on-ones. They're super organized. We have a focus each day. There are segments, off man, press man, and red zone. We film all of them. Monday morning, we get ball drills. Okay. Sunday is what we would call it's game day. We treat it as game day, high intensity. There's nothing going on Sunday other than one-on-ones. You want to go do gun show and hit the gym and, hit the bench and do whatever you want upper body, that's fine. Because now it's a high intensity day. Monday, we're catching and we are watching film of the one-on-ones, essentially a low intensity day because we need to recover. Okay. We are not touching our legs. You could do some light tempos, whatever you want to do. Tuesday, we're back to like routes. It'll be a hard break day. That's the time to hit your leg day. That's the time to do your speed work because we're back to a high intensity day, and Wednesday is off for us. and you have to structure this week like this, but it ends up working out pretty well. Wednesday is now off, so now you're really recovering. Thursday, same as Tuesday. Friday is, again, low intensity day like Monday. We might hit some releases, some top of routes, some yak. Saturday is off completely. On the off days, you're recovering. You're kind of off your feet as much as possible. You want to go hit the gun show, go hit the gun show. But we want to optimize recovery, because think about it. If you're running full speed routes on Tuesday and then you're hitting legs on Wednesday, and then you're running full speed routes on Thursday, which is one of the most expensive things on the body. Like, running full speed routes is expensive. When are your legs recovering? When's your central nervous system recovering? Like, it's just not. And I completely understand when you get to camp, it's going to be routes. So then make your tempo days routes. So now you're running routes Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Make your tempo days on Monday or Friday route work. So you're running 75%, 70%, 60%, and you're going through the tree, or you're running a 2-minute drill, but it's sub-maximally.
Yeah.
I think going like a high-low approach is probably the best bet. So some of you guys are workaholics. Like I had to be on the field. And I felt like I wasn't doing enough if I wasn't. Find a routine that's really low level that makes you feel like you've won the day. Like, whether that's catches, top or out. Yeah, like there's just a ton of stuff.
Low stuff.
So I would structure high, low, off day, middle of the week, one off day on the weekend. That's kind of how I would do it.
Yeah. And I love that. I guess the one thing I wanted to add to that is, like, we go into these days with like a focus on whether it's a pressure step, whether it's, we're hip shifting, like we kind of take, some of these movements and dedicate the days to it and just like really focus on that. So, like, if today's focus is pressure step, it may specifically be, slants and glances, right? And like, we really hone in on that. I'm not one that, again, like if we have a competition day, then you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff, different routes, all this stuff. If our focus is, hey, this route, this movement or whatever, I don't like getting all over the place with all these different routes and variations and stuff. Well, don't get me wrong, we add variations, certain stems or maybe a tempo or something, but I don't want to get all over the map, because I feel like then we're drifting away from the main focus. And I want to make sure that we are fully engulfed in what the objective is. And that's to, maximize or really hone in on the pressure step today, or hone in on hip drop when it comes to, 45 or, 90, whatever the case would be. So I love the week split. I think that's great. I think that's something where a lot of people, especially in this entering this spring ball kind of, then you'll have a break before camp and all these type of things. And the high school guys are getting ready for spring ball later in the spring. I know we won't start until the end of April, but it's like you can incorporate this into your routines now. Even if you incorporate some of it, like Coach Vanucci was saying, like, the high and low days. I think that's excellent. And you'll see the improvement. And again, like for you workaholics out there, guys that really want to get that work in, you can still get great work in just by being out there. You don't have to do everything at a high intensity. We stress the importance of the mental reps. Like, that's huge. If you've ever done studies, like I was just telling the guys on Saturday, I want to say, is like, they tested Olympic sprinters. They hooked them up to all these, machines and all this stuff and monitoring their brainwave and all these things. And it's like, they told them to run their race in their mind and the same muscles fire. There's an importance to taking those mental reps. You can still get a ton of work in without beating your body up every day. You can do things at half speed. You can just get your catches in. You can watch film. There's a ton that you can do to improve. It doesn't always have to be, all right, well, I need to get better at these routes, so every single day I need to run these routes full tilt. It's not going to help. And, you're going to end up wearing yourself out. What he said, I love that. And I would hope that if you're listening, man, definitely take that approach. And I'm sure if you want to get more in depth and in detail, man, just hit him up and he'll be able to explain it further. But that's key. That's key. And again, like having that focus for the day, like it's about deliberate practice. Are we just out on the field for an hour and a half, just doing whatever? Or is there's a deliberate plan that we are wanting to accomplish? It's huge. I'm all for guys wanting to get that extra work in. But to me, if you're just out there going through the motions, or you're just kind of whatever, and there's no plan, it's almost like a waste. I'm not going to say it's a total waste of time, because there's some importance or some benefits to it, but you're really not maximizing that time at all, So yeah, I love that type of plan. I think it's great. So that was a great question for sure. Like I said, we had a few more questions. We'll get to it either next week or we'll respond to it on social media. But again, these are the fundamental movements that we wanted to talk about. Hopefully, we were able to explain things well enough. Obviously, if any questions, man, we'd love to hear from you guys. We're really excited about the further engagement that you guys have, questions, comments, like just let us know what's on your mind. If there's certain topics that you guys want us to cover, we're all ears, man. This is, obviously this is only episode 2. We have some big plans here. We've already locked up some really great guests that we're super pumped about. It's just going to get incredible. So we appreciate all the love and support already, man. A lot of people are on board with what we're doing, and we're really grateful to be able to give back to the Wideout culture, man.
Yeah. Your friends should think you're like a psycho because you're so obsessed with your craft. Just like my 2 cents. Like if the people should think you're nuts. People should think you're nuts. That's kind of how it's got to be approached. That's how I'm going to leave today. Like the people that don't have similar goals to you should think you're out of your mind. Like legitimately, like crazy, like obsessed. So, and that's how you're going to obtain things. That's it. You got to be obsessed with it.
Have to. You'll put the most into it, and you'll get the most out of it, no doubt. All right, guys. Hey, we're gonna wrap this session up, man. We'll be back again next week with our first guest. I'm excited about it. It's gonna be awesome.
The next 2 guests are both
like I said.
So
we ain't gonna say too much, but things are gonna get real fun, and there's gonna be a lot of great talk going on, a lot of knowledge shared, knowledge that came with a lot of experience, just guys doing it at a high level. We're gonna get coaches, we're gonna get players, like all stuff Wideout related, and it again, what we're hoping for is for this to become a truly great resource when it comes to not only football, but obviously specifically Wideout play. So just stay in contact with us, man. Be on the lookout for more content and future shows, and we'll see you guys in a week.
Looking forward to it. Appreciate you.